Lion does not feel guilty when it kills a gazelle, right? You do not feel guilty when you squash a fly. And I think that means something. I just think that really means something.
I love superheroes and I love superhero movies. They're a great way to escape from reality for a little bit and to feel a little more empowered in yourself just from watching another one mold into a hero. But for the most part, superhero films either have a one-note villain who you tend to forget about the moment that the hero sequel comes out, or you find the hero so unbearable to watch on screen that you don't want the studio to release a sequel. This doesn't apply to Chronicle though, and that's thanks to director Josh Trank and the screenwriter Max Landis, who didn't want to make your run-of-the-mill superhero movie. In an interview of Empire Magazine and AMC, Josh Trank talked about how he wanted to put his own flair on the POV style films that had been booming from the late 2000s and early 2010s, so that the movie actually felt like it was fleshed out in a movie about characters and not just the POV style.
There was a certain style that I wanted to work, and that a certain math behind it, and that it would only be through a movie like this that embraced something that is usually considered a sacrilege from a cinephile's standpoint of doing a POV film and making it sort of, big and deep and like a movie.
Yeah.
Josh wanted this to feel as real as possible, and he helped do that by having no score for this film. He wanted no music to tell the audience how to feel. Josh Trank and Max Landis put so much care in this story, with the script being tight and with them really making a coming-to-age story disguised as a superhero film.
That was one of the first things I knew right off the bat, that that I couldn't have any score in the movie. American Graffiti is one of my favorite movies, and something that I always loved in that film is how George Lucas used the radio as the score of the film.
You can really tell that Josh was inspired by this, with using a lot of songs in Matt or Steve's car off the radio. I can't play any of these songs due to me fighting enough copyright claims already on these videos, but songs like Homecoming from Lost Patrol that plays when Andrew first hurts a man signifies that the evil side that lurks within him. Or when Andrew finally decides to use his powers on other people and Ziggy Stardust plays, making me feel that Andrew is now becoming this alter ego he's built in his head by being the apex predator. And just like how David Bowie's album shows the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust, this film shows Andrew's rise and fall from his own hubris.
Did left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man. I think he could leave them to hand. Became on so loaded man. Well hung a snow white tan. So where were the spiders?
This film feels real, and they do this by giving the kids telekinesis. Instead of them stopping muggers or an alien invasion, they just pull pranks on people, because that's what kids with these newfound powers would do until one of them takes it too far. Josh Trank and Max Landis felt this film was Columbine with powers, not that he wrote that in a statement to the studio he sent, or fantasized the movie in that manner by shooting the film in that way for the climax, but that's what the two felt internally.
Early before the screenplay was written, we kind of said Columbine with powers, but that was just kind of internally between Max and I, because we didn't want anybody to think this was a Columbine kind of movie.
The way that Josh does implement this idea of Columbine with powers is by showing us these kids just living, being themselves, goofing around, laughing, making mistakes. So by the time the end does come and the media covers Andrew's outlash and the city as a massacre, we have something to remember that he wasn't always like this and that he was a person just like the rest of us.
Bowling for Columbine really put the spotlight on what really happened to these guys and who they really were, and not the mass media interpretation of two kids who shot up their school, but two extremely troubled guys, and how this might have been different if somebody intervened, or if anybody really gave a shit about them.
Yeah. Next, I want to move on and talk about how much I like that Josh Trank was able to set up so many things for this movie. Max Landis wrote good and legit reasons under why this movie would be in a POV style, and it's because at the start, our main character Andrew is using it as a way to record his home life because of the things his abusive dad does to him, as well as recording his last days with his dying mother. But due to Andrew's lack of social skills and lack of social hierarchy, he is distant from everybody around him. So when the camera starts to distance himself more from everyone, Andrew seems to enjoy it.
Like records right onto the camera. No, I just want to record all the stuff that we can do, you know?
Yeah, but it's like all the time. You don't feel like it's a little weird, like it puts a barrier between you and everything else?
I don't know. Maybe I want to marry you.
This film is all about setup and execution. Like Andrew's day at school setting up perfectly how his night's going to go at the party his cousin Matt invites him to later on that weekend, or the party they go to later on in the film. At first, we find out that Andrew doesn't drink.
Have a beer, talk to people.
I don't drink.
It's most likely due to his father's drinking problem set up in the opening, but after that, Matt tells Andrew to leave him alone just like he did at the start of the school day. Andrew gets bullied verbally and physically.
I should break your bitch ass nose, you know that?
No, I wasn't.
Don't talk back to me, bitch.
Okay.
And he's left by himself to sit outside like usual. This is where we meet Steve, who actually takes a second to recognize Andrew and ask him what's wrong, after telling him that he needs the camera to see something crazy though. And this crazy thing that Steve has to get recorded is this hole in the middle of the woods. And I think this is a good time to mention how I love how this film would much rather deep dive into our characters than their powers, because Andrew, Steve, and Matt are only in this hole for a couple of minutes, and that's the only time we really see it in the movie. We see this big blue looking crystal heart thing that seems to be far from human until its blue color turns red, causing all three of them to be attacked by it and knocked out. And that's it. We learn more about their powers from them later on, but there's no big scene of them going to a wizard's cave like in Shazam, or going to Oa like in Green Lantern. It's just, this is how they got their powers, now let's keep moving on with the story, which I like. And it's not long for them to start realizing they have powers and testing them, like the very next scene not long. And this is where we get the ball test, which is not only a fun scene all around, but it also sets up who's the strongest and who's the weakest in the group. Steve appears to be the weakest in the group, with him just throwing a fastball to Matt, with it looking like he just put a little extra oomph into it. Matt still isn't able to stop the fastball though, and gets hit in the face pretty hard. We then see the spots change, with Matt getting ready to throw the ball at Steve, but this time we get a cool shot of Matt throwing it at the ground and it comes shooting right back up at Steve's nose. We then get to see some more flair when Matt throws the ball off screen just for it to come zooming back in, knocking Steve out.
Yeah, okay.
I'm one.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's go.
But after that, we get to see Andrew's test, and physically he might be the weakest in the group, but mentally he is strong and determined. So when Matt goes to deck him in the face with a speedball, the ball will stop dead in its tracks, until Andrew drops it because his nose starts to bleed, which happens when they concentrate too hard. And if that doesn't set up that Andrew is the strongest in the group, well then the Lego scene should prove it pretty damn fast.
Sick. Dude, I hate you.
I'm impressed, man. I am impressed.
Sure, we have things like when they learn to fly, and Steve is the first one to do it, but Andrew picks it up quite fast compared to Matt.
Think Harrier jet. Think Harrier jet.
Oh, man. God damn it. Okay.
And after that, we get this beautiful shot of them flying through the air and playing catch. Then we get this unexpected surprise of an airplane flying right past them in the clouds, causing Steve to get hit by the impact to go flying down out of the sky. Luckily we see him picked up by Andrew from the camera's POV, and then we get the camera picked up too miraculously.
Steve! Hey, Matt! Do you hear that? What is that? No! Steve!
When they reach the ground, we get this endearing scene by Steve and another line establishing Andrew's the fastest flyer too. Even with this accident though, Matt says today was the best day of his life, with the others agreeing.
Oh, shit. Almost died, man. Almost. Andrew, you saved my life. Oh my God. You saved my life. Andrew, you saved my life. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I tried to save you, man. Andrew was just quicker.
How did that go?
And that's all this movie is. It's just a few kids goofing around with their new abilities until something goes wrong. The most the group as a whole uses their powers on innocent people is when they go to stores and start messing with kids or adults.
Get the top. I'll get the top.
Good.
Get the legs. Okay. Okay, wait. Oh, she's just looking at it. What you looking at, girl? Stay in school.
Well, for the most part.
The guy chewing the gum, I'm gonna get the gum, pull it right out of his mouth.
Okay, I got him.
Wait, why are we running? We don't need to run.
And when they're not pulling pranks on people, we're learning about the extent of their powers.
Right now. Like I said, see?
Crap. Just pretend that there's a...
Or their characters themselves in their lives. Steve admits to Andrew he believes his mom is cheating on his dad, with his dad becoming a ghost of man he was, while Andrew opens up about his father, Steve, about how his dad was a firefighter before an injury caused him not to be able to work, so now he just cashed government checks and drinks. Andrew also makes a comment about how he wants the two of them to go to Tibet with him, and how the experience could really be enlightening, especially with their powers. He talks about how it could be a really beautiful place, and how the peace is just what they need. Andrew also makes a comment about how he wants the two of them to go to Tibet with him, and how the experience could really be enlightening, especially with their powers. He talks about how it could be a really beautiful place, and how the peace is just what they need.
It would be really cool. Peaceful.
No, I think it's a really good idea. I actually would like to go. I'm down. You down, Steve?
What? I don't know, man. There's no bikinis in Tibet. So I don't know if I'm down for that.
It was brilliant.
Moments where they plan their future as a group won't always last though, and this starts when a truck driver is aggressively honking his horn at the group while they drive down a rainy road. Andrew then decides to get Steve to turn the camera his way before Andrew says abracadabra and pushes the car into a ditch full of water.
Just make sure it's zoomed out on the left.
Gotcha. I can see you.
Okay, buddy.
What you gonna do?
How is this guy bothering you?
What are you doing?
Whoa! Andrew! Shit!
What the hell did you just do?
Steve and Matt freak out and stop the car, Steve even jumping into the water to save the man, all while Andrew screams that he didn't mean to, seconds after we saw what he just did.
Andrew!
This really shows what Andrew could do if he became a bad guy. With no hesitation, even a little bit of excitement, he could hurt or kill a man. So Matt and Steve decide to make rules, which involves no using it on others anymore and no using it in public. Even though Steve and Matt are mad at Andrew for hurting that man, the group's dynamic doesn't change drastically just yet. Steve is more worried than mad at Andrew. He wants him to be more social, and to get him out of his shell, he asks Andrew to do the talent show with him. This is really nice to Steve, and from the moment we've met him, he's been a really good friend to Andrew since the night of the party. Steve cared to ask what was wrong with Andrew at the party. He tries to give Andrew advice on how to be more social, as well as getting him to be more social by inviting him to the talent show as well as the after party. Not only that, Steve did that by encouraging and reassuring Andrew that there's something about him that makes him special.
No way.
Why not? It'll be good for you to get out there, you know, meet some people, meet some girls.
Dude, I'm not. It's just not.
What?
Look, I'm just really shy, okay? And I don't even have any talents. So.
What are you talking about? You don't have talent. You have talent. You've got talent.
And overall, Steve just gives Andrew a friend, somebody to lean on, and somebody who could relate to him, not just with their powers, but somebody who understood Andrew what it was like not to have the greatest home life. That's why it's even worse when everything falls apart. At least not the talent show, which goes quite well for Andrew and Steve, with them even playing off Andrew's loser status in their show.
Nice, Matt. No way!
After that amazing show, the three of them go to an after party where Andrew's social status is no longer seen as loser, but the man of the hour, as Steve would say. Even Matt acknowledges how it looks like Andrew is finally coming to his own skin.
God, I can see your head is like exploding right now.
What?
This is the beginning of your downfall. Hubris. Right there.
And this party is much different from one at the start of the movie. Andrew is talking to people, talking to girls, playing beer pong, and most importantly, drinking, which if you remember what I said at the first party scene, is something he doesn't do.
I don't drink.
So when he goes upstairs with his bright-haired lady friend, he ends up releasing all over her, just not in the way Andrew would have wanted.
Emerge from a cocoon or some shit like that.
Weirdo!
Wait, what happened?
Okay.
Is that
I need you out of my way now.
Oh, man. Drew!
This moment is set up so subtly, I love it. With Matt, you get Casey straight up saying, "You're drunk," but with Andrew, it's just one small line from the start of the film. Yes, this is an embarrassing moment for Andrew, and I can definitely see why he would be mad at Steve for keeping the camera on. I would be too. But Steve is being as good as a friend as he can be, trying to tell Andrew that what happened was alright. Throughout watching this whole film, it's clear that Steve has been there for Andrew, and Matt has mainly been there for Casey, or at least trying to win her over. I might not talk about Matt and Casey's relationship too much, but that's because I thought the relationship was a little bland, with no real chemistry between the two characters. After that incident though, Andrew feels more embarrassed and isolated than ever, and in this isolation he's starting to feel different than others, better than them. We see how he picks up this spider, ripping everything off with it, with more of a fascination than care. With a house full of abuse and death from his mother and father, it's no shock that Andrew's now projecting those feelings out. Even with this though, it's a bug. Not like Andrew is heartless, and while he's taking care of his dying mother, his drunk dad goes through his things and looking through his camera. Now, I don't know if Andrew's dad saw all of the tapes with him and his friends using their abilities on themselves and others, but if he did, Andrew's dad cares more about the money than the powers.
Hoarding a $500 camera while your mom dies in there? I mean, how selfish can you be?
Andrew's dad yells some more at him about how his friends don't really care about him, how his mother could be less sick if Andrew helped out more. This before Andrew loses his temper and calls his dad an idiot, to which his dad hits him and tosses him around for. This is when Andrew lashes out and throws his dad against the wall, threatening to kill him. Andrew takes his time to leave, and it's during another thunderstorm. We then cut to Matt at Casey's place, where he's having a nosebleed and Steve is trying to call him. I only mention this scene really because it helps establish that when one of them is extremely upset, the other's nose will bleed and be aware of the other's presence, on top of it being a side effect of concentrating too hard. This also helps reinforce how Matt is the least caring when it comes to the others in the group, and it's the only time I think I see a drop in chemistry between these two actors. While Matt is off busy with Casey as usual, Steve is drawn to Andrew above the clouds, where Steve is worried why Andrew is up there during a storm. Andrew's angry though, and with everything that's happened, he is insecure, so he yells at Steve to go away, how their friendship isn't real.
Will you stop acting like you give a shit?
Dude, why are you talking to me like this? I'm your best friend.
I don't have any friends. You were never my friend before any of this.
I hang out with you and Matt like every day.
I like this right here. This is Steve's way of saying, yes, we did only start hanging out because of these powers, but that's not why we continue to hang out. Steve has a girlfriend in the film too. You only see her once at the party, but you hear her over the phone a few times, and you always see Steve texting her, talking about how she thinks Steve is cheating because he's been spending so much less time with her. If Steve didn't care for Andrew, he would be like Matt, ignoring the nosebleeds and the voices in his head just to be with his woman, but he's Andrew's friend, his best friend. Which just makes this moment so much worse.
Just stop talking to me. Why won't you just leave me alone? Steve, I'm telling you, get away from me. Get away from me now. Please.
This death feels unexpected, but it's set up so clearly with Andrew's strength and progression as a character. Not only that, but with the way that Andrew's the one to save Steve while up in the sky when the plane passes by, only to be the one that takes his life up there as well.
Oh, shit. Almost died, man. I almost Andrew, you saved my life. Oh my God, you saved my life. Andrew, you saved my life. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's at this point of the film where Andrew's moral compass is gone. Steve was the heart of this group, and without him it will fall apart. It doesn't help that Andrew's resentment for himself for what he's done leads him to be distant from Matt, more distant than Matt has ever been before they got their powers. Sure, the public doesn't know what Andrew has done. They were thousands of feet up in the sky when it happened, and Steve's body was found in the middle of a field, but Matt knows, and he's sad he lost his friend, and even more, he's angry he's losing his cousin.
What did you do, Andrew? What did you do? Who am I supposed to tell about this? Who do I talk to? Who do I talk to about this? Why won't you just tell me what happened, Andrew?
Now Andrew is back where he was at the start of the film. No friends, Matt and him are no longer close, he sits outside by himself, and gets bullied once again. This time though, Andrew lashes out.
Hey, Wayne!
Andrew's now breaking all the rules, using his powers in public and on people, but again, he is much more fascinated in what he's done than remorseful, going through the teeth that he's ripped out from his bully, talking about the techniques he used with a sense of pride. He is no longer Andrew, at least not the one we knew at the start of the movie. He is now considering himself stronger than everybody, an apex predator as he says. He talks about how lions don't care when they kill gazelles since they're the apex predator of the jungle. Just like humans don't care when we kill a bug. This mindset though is dangerous when you believe everybody else around you to be that bug. Which Matt realizes is happening after the bully incident, so Matt goes to Andrews, yelling at him to get his act together before he has to intervene. Andrew is more annoyed at this comment than anything, knowing that he is stronger than Matt, not physically, but mentally. So when push comes to shove and Matt throws a punch, just like the baseball he threw, it stopped dead in its tracks. I like that Josh training consistently shows that Andrew is the strongest in the group. It really made me think about how Matt was going to be able to stop him if he went too far. That's when Andrew goes even further. Throughout the film, we see how sick his mom is, and without the $700 to pay for her meds, she will die, and Andrew won't lose the only other person keeping him attached to his love and humanity. So with no money to pay for a medication and no choice, Andrew decides to steal his father's old firefighter uniform and use his abilities to rob people. And again, I cannot understate how well this song works for his transformation. At this point, Andrew is a bad guy, but at least he's an understandable one. We know why he's doing this. Not only that, you kind of want him to make this decision, because if his mom does die, Andrew loses that one piece that connects him to his world and humanity, and he's too strong for that. Not that much humanity was intact when he decides to attack and rob some of the neighborhood lowlifes, but after brutally knocking them out, maybe even killing a couple of them, he realizes that it's nowhere near enough to pay for the medication, and he hits a gas station for a better chance. Though this attack goes less than well for Andrew, with the gas station attendant shooting a shotgun at Andrew, though he's able to push the gun to the side, the bullets unfortunately pierce a gas container, exploding the lot and leaving the gas attendant burnt and dead, with Andrew barely alive due to his father's uniform. We cut to the hospital where Andrew's father is there to visit him. While there, he tells an unconscious Andrew about how his mother has passed away, though he isn't saying this to mourn with his son, but to blame him. We cut to the hospital where Andrew's father is there to visit him. While there, he tells an unconscious Andrew how his mother passed away last night, and we see how hurt the father is, though he isn't saying it to mourn with his son, but to blame him.
If I just could have been there for her. You know, I was always there for her when you're out screwing around. And this one time, she needed me. And you took me away. But I want you to apologize to me.
With no Steve, his mom, or even Matt, Andrew snaps, and with that snap, half the room blows open like all of Andrew's anger had just exploded out of him. Matt sees what's happening through the news at Casey's house, and they rush over to the city as fast as they can because Matt wants to save his uncle and Andrew before he hurts anyone else. This climax is emotional and grand, with Matt flying out of the crowd and saving his uncle just for Andrew to fling him around while crying and asking why Matt would save the man who brought him so much pain. Matt just wants to save everyone though, even Andrew, pleading at him for them just to fly away and be a family. But Andrew believes his family died with Steve and his mom, the two people who cared about him the whole time they were a part of his life. Andrew even steals everybody's phones around him, recording himself while metaphorically and literally putting that barrier between him and everybody else that Steve is no longer there to try to break down. And with his humanity finally gone, Andrew has now become the apex predator in his mind.
Andrew, we can just fly away. We can get out of here. We can be family. Andrew, look at yourself. This isn't who you are. What?
I'm an apex predator.
Even with the heartfelt moments of the scene, it doesn't understate this is a superhero movie and a superhero climax. We watch them as they throw buses and cars at each other or crash through people's homes. It's a real Superman type fight.
Paul, stay away from the window!
Okay.
Paul, I'm
Are you
talking.
seeing this?
Get over the window.
Okay. Stay down!
But at least now, Matt has a fighting chance, since the gas explosion nearly killed Andrew, leaving him to be weaker than he was when Matt tried to throw a punch earlier. They set it up so well and so frequently that Andrew is so much stronger, and that this fight only works because Andrew is hurt. You think of all great superhero films with their climaxes, and the superhero doesn't just defeat the villain with power of friendship like an anime, or scare off the villain so there is no fight. They either have to outsmart the villain if the villain is too strong to defeat with pure force, which is the case with films like Iron Man or one of my favorite superhero climaxes, Doctor Strange, when he traps Dormammu in a time loop.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
What is happening?
Just as you gave Caecilius powers from your dimension, I brought a little power from mine. This is time. Endless, looped time.
Or if they are the same strength, the protagonist has to make the hardest choices to win, like Captain America who gives up the fight to help Bucky, or Superman who has to murder Zod to stop a family from being murdered themselves. And this is one of those fights, with Andrew still being the more skilled fighter but being weaker from his injuries, and things aren't looking good for Andrew when he's getting hurt just as much as Matt. With this fight though, we get to see how far these two characters have progressed with their strengths and how strong they actually are. They're being hit with a lot more than forks now. Watch how Matt is able to catch a bullet and then hit by a street lamp just to keep flying.
Take him out! No! Leave me alone!
Even after all this though, Matt just wants to get out of there with Andrew, continuing to beg his cousin to stop, which I thought was sad and realistic. You have to think about what's going on through Matt's head right now, as he wonders how he's going to block the next punch or save the next person. Matt knows he's going to have to make the hard choice soon if he's going to stop Andrew. Matt has to think fast though when a squad of officers surround the two from the front, deciding to shoot at will. Luckily Andrew stops all the bullets, and we get this really sad scene of Matt just crying for Andrew to stop as Andrew loses control, knowing that even if the cops do stop him, a lot more people will be dead before then. And so Matt makes the hardest decision I've seen a hero in one of these films can take. This death is extremely impactful, with the way that Matt tells Andrew earlier in the film that his hubris will be the death of him, and he was right. Nobody did this to Andrew but himself. Andrew accidentally killed Steve, his best friend. He attacked his bully and dad. He robbed and killed people. Andrew even causes the explosion that almost kills him at the gas station. Everything Andrew did, he did to others on his own will, believing he was better than everybody. Andrew's attack on the city is now over, and Matt lies there looking lifeless, and I bet he wishes he was dead. Not only did he just kill the last person who could ever understand what he was going through, but he killed his cousin, a cousin he feels like he could have helped. He barely gets time to process what he just did, as he has to fly away to prevent from being arrested. The final scene we get is Matt flying through the clouds and making it to a very snowy mountain, where he tells Andrew how sorry he is and that he loves him to the camera, like he did before at the party. The only chances he got to tell Andrew he loved him.
I love you, man. I didn't ever get a chance to tell you, but I love you.
Matt brings this camera as a way to honor Andrew. He turns it around and we see the beautiful mountains of Tibet. Matt says his goodbyes and leaves the camera facing the mountains, so Andrew and us can see the part of him that mattered, his hopes, his dreams, passions, and humanity.